Welcome everybody to another Build Fly Go video. We're flying to the Petit Jean fly-in on Petit Jean Mountain in Arkansas. The mountain is about 800 feet above um, AGL, effectively. It's about 1,000 feet, while the Little Rock area is around 200 feet. It's, I'm going to say, maybe a 20, 15-minute flight, 15-minute flight from northwest of Little Rock, Arkansas. I actually got my pilot's license at North Little Rock Airport in Little Rock. And I had flown in quite a few times to Petit Jean Mountain, but not to the fly-in. I don't know if either the fly-in wasn't around back then, or more likely I just didn't know much about what was going on in aviation back then. I was just flying a 172 around and trying to get my license. We're trying some splicing in picture here. I've got two cameras. The next one's going to fade in shortly. This one up on the tail, the battery unfortunately only lasted for a little while for most of this flight for the first segment. There's no power up there yet. We're still working on that. The picture-in-picture, or the interior shot there, is the new GoPro camera. It's a GoPro Hero 7 that we're trying out, and it is powered, so that one will last the entire flight, and of course it'll expand to fill the whole screen. Interesting tidbit here. I'm using the time warp feature on the Hero 7 and the time lapse feature on the Session up on the tail, so which is why you're seeing them sort of different. The time warp feature finds the horizon and stabilizes based off of the horizon, and the time lapse feature just takes a picture. So it's interesting. It's different stabilization. One of them is smoother. The smaller one there, the new one, is smoother, but it's doing sort of an odd, like the airplane is moving and the horizon is staying still, which I think is the opposite of what I want. So we might change that going forward. A lot of you have asked me to change the rate for the time lapses so that things are faster in certain spots and slower in other spots. So we'll be trying some of that in this video. The plan here is about this flight, I guess, a little bit. I filed for VFR flight following, so nothing too complicated, no IFR flight plans today. And I filed 7,500 feet. I had about 20 knots on the nose the entire way to my first stop, which is most of the way there. Cuba City is the first stop. And that slowed us down fairly considerably. I think it ended up being a little over 4 hours for the whole flight from Wisconsin to Arkansas. Granted, I've done this drive before, and it's over 10 hours for the drive. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember being over 10 hours and being miserable. So really, 4 hours is not bad for this. Let's, of course, not think about what the costs are here. That's easier for everybody, myself specifically. You'll notice that in the picture-in-picture, I'm recording some stuff with my iPhone. I'm making a couple of little short videos on procedures and other things that I'll be posting later. I know a lot of you guys have asked me for that as well, and some of the equipment that I use. So we'll post some of that later. But anyway, so here we are. We're coming up on the spot where the battery dies on the Session. It's a GoPro Hero Session 5 that's up on the tail. It's the smaller GoPro. I wish they still made that form factor. But anyway, so that'll die, and then we'll full screen, and quite shortly after that, we'll be getting to Cuba City. I picked Cuba City on the fly, haha. Based off of sort of fuel prices and where I was going to be for fuel. The plan for the return is to go to Little Rock, to go into town and drive around and look around a little bit and get some lunch and then fly home. So I wanted to have some fuel to fill up at Little Rock, but not a ton. My rule of thumb for going to expensive FBOs is I want to give them some business, but I'm also not going to give them top off my tanks from empty business, because if they're charging $2 a gallon more, um, you know, that's a lot of money. So I'll usually give them at least 10 gallons of business. We'll talk more about that on the next video. But I'm interested to hear your feedback on how this picture-in-picture is working out for you. I'm playing with this and happy to change. Yeah, this is when I discovered I hadn't plugged in the camera. Um, so I'm putzing around looking for cables to plug it in, and there we go. So I'm accelerating this a bit from before, because this is a fairly dull part of the flight. And there we go, we're slowing it down now for the approach into Cuba City. Not sure I'm a fan of this stabilizing based off of the horizon. We'll play with it some more and see where we go. So here's Cuba City. Winds were reasonably light, no big deal here. Nice little FBO and pretty damn cheap fuel, so I got as much as I could there. And we continue from Cuba City to Petit Jean. Now this is internal only, and you guys had asked for make this video and not time lapse for some of the segments. So I believe this video is at 2x. At 1x, honestly, this is really boring. We're taxiing to a runway and taking off. Nothing exciting going on here. So 2x video, and stabilized also by the GoPro. So I wonder how this is going to look for the movement of the horizon versus the cockpit. Taxiing back on the single runway at Cuba City. There were no taxiways either along the runway, which is fine. It's a small little airport. Good fuel, took care of us. I believe, yep, it's 1836. So we're heading north right now, and we're going to take off and basically keep going south. Throttle forward, and off we go. Nose is up. I rotate at 60 knots. Which for this airplane is, it'll rotate sooner than that, but I like to have a little bit more speed before we come up. You'll notice that autopilot comes on pretty damn quickly. These are long flights. There's no reason for me to hand fly this. That's the reason you pay Garmin the big bucks for them to do it for you. We're going to start jumping ahead pretty quickly here, because there's about an hour of video, which is different from the time-lapse. So it'll look like a time-lapse, maybe, sort of. Again, nothing exciting happens, unfortunately, or fortunately, rather. You'll see me looking at, on the screens, at different things going on, but nothing good. So let's jump ahead. Okay, so we've jumped ahead a few, maybe 20-30 minutes. We are at the mountain now. You can see it looks like we're lower, but we're actually not. We've descended from 7,500-ish to the mountain level, which is maybe, we're maybe at 2,000 AGL right now. Or 2,000 feet rather, 1,000 AGL. And we're in the pattern for Petit Jean. So we're slowing down to 2x again. And this is gorgeous. There's a runway with a lake on one end, and it's forested all around it. And you'll notice on this end of the runway on the left, there's this sort of like taxi ramp area with a bunch of airplanes. And we were all parked right there, and we're camping. You see the big tent there? We're camping at the big tent, or around the big tent. It's a campsite. It's phenomenal. And it's airplane after airplane after airplane here. Of course, there's an audience for the landing, and I think I did all right. We'll back taxi. This is not usually a controlled airfield, but because of the nature of the event, there was an air boss. I believe that's actually something that gets cleared by the FAA. You request to do that, and someone gets assigned to the job. It was someone who apparently had done this one a few times before. They greeted us by name or greeted me by name as I called in for the first time. It was really cool. And here we are. They're bringing us into the parking area. I'm sort of hugging the trees here, watching my wing. And I believe that's another 9 right there. And we park, and they welcome us. This was a fantastic event. Check out some of my Instagram posts. Subscribe. Thanks for watching.